Good morning, everyone. Happy Wednesday. I'm the Gray Strega, and I'm here to give you your daily collective read for today, Wednesday, August 23rd, 2023. What do we have coming through in the cards for today? Let's get the first 5 cards in our 5-card spread. First card that we are starting our day off with today is 4 of Pentacles in its reversal, and we like to see this specifically because I believe we got this card yesterday and it was in its upright. This is a moment of giving forth, really putting that time, energy into those spaces and places that you feel are having that point of significance for you at this time. This is coming out of some of this card being in its upright yesterday. So while there may have been feelings yesterday of conserving some of your energy, today we're seeing that conservation of energy is now coming forth in very tangible ways today. This could be a lot of physical expression, putting time, effort, and energy into spaces and places that require this level or degree of work at this time. Now, second card that we have coming through in our 5-card spread for today is we have here our 5 of Swords in its reversal. Where are we seeing that you're putting this time, effort, and energy into right now? This could be around building some point of closure around situations and circumstances that you may be feeling are open-ended. This is taking care of a lot of business today. For some of you, you may remember we spoke a lot about closure yesterday, about trying to maintain or build a certain degree of closure as you proceed forward from this point. This is a moment that we are actually seeing that you're trying to get that level or degree of closure. Some of you are actually going to be maintaining and allowing this energy that you're putting forth today to build this sense of closure for you around open-ended situations and circumstances. While for others, this is actively trying to look at what you can put into these situations and circumstances that you feel are somewhat open-ended. Now, third card coming through right now in our 5-card spread for today is we have here our 3 of Wands in its reversal. This is some of that blockage that we identified yesterday. If you will recall, one of the major overriding concerns, particularly for feminine energy right now, bearing in mind that this is not based on gender, but what you feel most aligned to, had to do with some lack of clarity as it relates to the path going forward at this time. This is a lot of care and degree that is being paid to those spaces and places to try to see if there is a path of easement going forward. That 10 of Wands energy that we saw yesterday coming back into play for today. And some of this is requiring an assessment around past circumstances, past situations, building this point of closure, building this point of resolution, but also putting a lot of concerted effort into those spaces and places right now. Not a lot of holding back that we're seeing today. For some of you, this could be looking at situations from the past and identifying that you may not particularly see a path forward at this point. While for others, this is building clarity right now around these circumstances and situations to try to identify if there is a path ahead, if there is something here that can be clarified or cleared up to allow a point of easement in terms of where things are headed or where things are going right now. Now, you will recall that for feminine energy yesterday, this was a bit of that emotional overwhelm that we identified was occurring, that was creating a point of overwhelm, but we saw the fact that the feminine energy was actively putting work in to try to determine whether there were going to be points of clarity that were going to be received potentially from masculine energy at this time. While for masculine energy, we saw that some of the point of difficulty or the burden right now had to do with being able to become vulnerable enough to be able to have these difficult conversations, to work through some of these hurdles or obstacles that you're currently experiencing right now. Now, for the masculine and the feminine energy that are in partnership at this moment, we see that this is more of that collaborative effort that we identified yesterday, putting in that level or degree of openness and honesty around circumstances or situations, all for the sake of coming into a point of better easement going forward. While for the energy that is not necessarily in partnership right now, this is going to feel a bit different because this is trying to understand whether there is a path forward here or whether this is going to continue to be a level or a degree of a blocker at this time. Now, continuing to get clarification on these cards right now. Fourth card in our 5-card spread for today is Here's that vulnerability coming back to the surface right now. This is the same place, same position that we saw this card yesterday, a continuation on our reading yesterday. We are recognizing the fact that for both masculine and feminine energy right now, there is this feeling of vulnerability that is rising to the surface right now. Where is that feeling of vulnerability coming from? Well, we're seeing that it's coming from some lack of clarity as it relates to what that outcome, what that long-term plan is, what that goal is. This is already some of this Mercury retrograde shining its head in terms of the situations and circumstances right now. This point of vulnerability requires a level or degree of clarity. But what we appreciate right now for both masculine and feminine energy is there is a lot of concerted effort being put in at this time to try to build that point of determination, to see if something has some productive path forward at this point, or if this is something that you need to effectively build closure on at this moment for yourself, recognizing that that path ahead is still too obfuscated or hidden, that is not allowing you that sense of confidence in order to proceed confidently. Now, fifth card today for our 5-card spread, before we start getting clarification on these cards for today, is transverse. We've got our transverse temperance card. Remember that degree or level of impatience that we saw coming through yesterday? Here it is again with that temperance in its reversal. You will remember that with that 7 of Pentacles that we received in its reversal, that there was a feeling right now of frustration around situations or circumstances that you may be putting a considerable amount of time and patience and energy into right now, wanting to see the results of your actions effectively. This is why we saw so much of the activation yesterday for the feminine in terms of feeling a point of emotional overwhelm in that degree or capacity of putting something into something and not necessarily seeing the results that you're ideally desiring at this point. This is why feminine energy was working from a point of trying to get some of this clarity yesterday, allowing that emotional overwhelm to effectively activate them to be able to get that point of understanding. While for masculine right now, this was coming through as a bit or degree of patience that is effectively being required. Because while masculine energy was in a point where we saw that they themselves were also going through that same level or degree of feeling, we did see the fact that some point of clarity that needs to be added to a circumstance or situation was creating more of a challenge space for the masculine energy at this time. Masculine energy was channeling this by trying to make the immediate present as stable as possible and trying to decide what they could put forth in a tangible way to lend confidence to the feminine energy that was experiencing some of this point of frustration. Now, for masculine and feminine energy that are working in partnership right now, we really see that this is a point or a degree where you are struggling to maintain patience around certain situations and circumstances. It's not going to necessarily feel easy today, which is why we see that this temperance card is in a challenging position. There's a bit of a challenge that is being called forth here because could potentially be, for the energies that are in partnership, a moment of recognition about trying to build clarity at this time, but having to have some point of patience because that clarity isn't immediately forthcoming. But what we appreciate for that is that there's tangible effort. There's tangible practice being put into play here with our 4 of Pentacles in its reversal to be able to come into a point of easement, to be able to put practical application into circumstances or situations where you may be lacking this level or degree of clarity. But it is taking a little bit of time. And so we see that this is a bit of that like hold music, if you will, that is necessary, that could be feeling like a point of frustration, but you're not letting yourself stay completely inactive during that. There's tangible work that's being done in the space in between. For the masculine and feminine energy that is not in partnership right now, this is going to be more of a challenging space because we do feel that we're seeing that level or degree of frustration that's still present, though it has come into a little bit of a point of easement right now. For masculine and feminine energy, there may have been some resolutions or clarity that came through as it relates to some of the discussions or discourse that occurred yesterday. And that is what is allowing some level or degree of patience to persevere here, even in the face of some circumstances or situations where you may not necessarily feel that you have all of the optics in terms of that long-term path or that long-term goal ahead. There is something about being in this waiting period that is somewhat vulnerable for both masculine and feminine energy. But we do see that for both energies, there's a lot of practical effort that is being applied right now while you try to maintain this level or degree of patience. Now, let's see if we can get some clarification on the cards that we're seeing on the table right now. Clarification between our 4 of Pentacles in its reversal in combination combination with our 5 of swords in its reversal. So putting tangible effort and practice into play, tangible work being done right now around circumstances or situations that you feel are open-ended, that you did not necessarily feel you have closure on, working to get that point of closure, either for yourself right now or through the active expression of this energy right now in these spaces and places. Utilizing actually some of that tangible effort right now to determine if there can be a point of resolution that allows you to be able to have that sense of clarity in terms of where you're moving right now. This is some of that stuck energy that we saw yesterday that we're now seeing, that continuation of applying a lot of perseverance to try to build that sense of resolution. May I please have one card to clarify? Clarification coming through right now with Emperor in its reversal. Now, this is going to feel a little bit different, bearing in mind that this is not based on gender, but what you feel most aligned to, depending on whether you align to feminine or masculine energy right now. For masculine energy, this is something that is testing your own degree of patience, your own degree of self-mastery right now. There is something here, as I pointed out, about this Temperance card being in its transverse. This is a frustrating situation to a certain extent. And what we're really seeing to a certain extent is for the masculine energy, potentially, it is trying your own ability to maintain a level or degree of self-mastery at this time. Your willpower could be feeling a little bit on edge today, masculines, as you go through this. A lot of sense of trying to maintain a feeling of control over circumstances or situations. You need to be a little cautious about your energy today, masculine, as it relates to these circumstances or situations, because we see that there is something that is being internally triggered as it relates to this. But we also appreciate and see that to a certain extent, masculine energy is putting a lot of work right now in the tangible space, trying to give forth. As you may recall, I identified yesterday the fact that we saw that the masculine energy was being challenged to give forth in a certain degree or in a certain capacity that made them feel like they were in a vulnerable space. This is some of that vulnerability coming to the forefront right now, because this is masculine energy continuing to battle between that ability of giving forth in a way that makes you feel vulnerable while also maintaining a level degree of self-control as you do so. This is a bit of the challenge point for the masculine right now, because this is the thing that is needed in order to build this sense of closure or clarity going forward from this point. For some of the masculine energy right now, this is that moment that you are giving forth in the way that we saw that the feminine required or needed you to yesterday, but feeling very somewhat losing a sense of control or mastery as you do so. Some of that vulnerability coming back to the surface right now, doubly so for masculine with this strength in its reversal. While for the other part of the masculine energy right now, this could be something that you're still struggling or working on whether you want to go forward with at this time, because it is creating such a space or place that is so much of a challenge for you to maintain your own level or degree of mastery at this moment in order to give forth in these things. For a lot of the masculine energy right now, we're seeing that this is a point of consideration in recognizing that there are some situations and circumstances that are effectively still open and available to you at this time, but they're going to require this level of degree or effort. And this is what you're challenging yourself upon today, to ask whether you have the confidence in order to give forth in this capacity. While for feminine energy right now, we're seeing that this is a moment that you yourself are still very much in the same energy that we identified that we found you yesterday as it relates to masculine energy. We saw that the fact that for feminine energy, there is a level or degree of clarity. The tangible that we saw that the feminine was looking for around circumstances and situations yesterday came from clarity, transparency, immediate offers. These are the things that the feminine is looking for right now in order to find that path forward at this time. And feminine energy is assessing and reviewing the masculine energy around them at this time to see whether the masculine energy has this level or degree of capacity in being able to give forward in this way. For feminine energy, this is determining whether situations and circumstances are reaching a point of internal closure, something that you can build that level or degree of closure on for yourself at this time, recognizing that this is something that the masculine energy might not have an ability or degree to give you at this moment. Or for the other part of the feminine energy right now, you are recognizing that the masculine energy is allowing themselves to be vulnerable to this degree. They are allowing themselves to open up in this capacity, and that is allowing a pathway that is going to effectively clear up some of these concerns or uncertainties as it relates to the long-term path or goal in terms of partnership at this moment. While for masculine and feminine energy, they're in partnership at this time, this is dual effort. There is a recognition that they're going through right now. Feminine could even be lending some degree or level of support right now to a masculine energy that is feeling some of these points of vulnerability today. But what we appreciate is this is dual effort for the energies that are in partnership. Let's continue to get clarification on these cards right now between our Five of Swords in its reversal in combination with our Three of Wands. This is that moment of assessing situations or circumstances from the past that may be feeling somewhat open-ended. But the point of clarification that you're really providing yourself at this moment is whether you see any degree or possibility of a path forward at this time. For masculine energy, we are seeing a lot of this point of observation recognizes that in order to have that point of clarity moving forward, there is this point of needing to come into a more vulnerable center. There would almost be a level of vulnerability that would be required to put forth at this time in order to allow some clearance space for these open-ended situations or certain circumstances from the past to be able to have a productive path forward. While for feminine right now, this is that point of clarity in identifying that you feel to a certain degree or extent that the reason that you can effectively see a path forward around some circumstances or situations right now is because this is what is required from the masculine energy that is in partnership around these circumstances or situations, that it would require a level or degree of vulnerability and clarity from some circumstances and situations from the past. And this is that moment that we are really seeing that this is requiring the feminine energy to be in a space or place where you are trying to assess whether the masculine energy that is associated to those situations or circumstances from the past has the capacity to maintain a level of self-control, but also be vulnerable at this time. This is either the point of closure that we're seeing that you are getting right now in terms of your own personal journey to help you identify the blockage and move forward with an easement and an understanding on why something did not come about the way that you had ideally hoped or aspired. Whereas for the other part of the energy right now, this is potentially receiving this point of understanding, getting this level of clarity, potentially even having some of this masculine energy reach out in this capacity that is helping you understand why something has now changed, that is allowing you to assess what may have prevented things from moving forward in a more sufficient way in the past. For masculine and feminine energy, this is dual work that you're doing to try to overcome any of these hurdles and blockages. May I please have one card to clarify? Here it is again. We got it yesterday, same exact position. Guys, we are seeing a lot of the cards from yesterday coming back on the table in the same positions that we received them yesterday. This is a lot of that ongoing work, hence that Temperance card in its transfers. This is an ongoing situation, all for the sake of deeper easement, finding that point of easement going forward, allowing something to become easier. For masculine and feminine energy, there is a moment right now that is requiring you to feel some of this connection point to the past. You are going through a period right now where you are assessing and really looking at some of these past circumstances or situations that are feeling somewhat open-ended. And this is that moment that you are trying to identify if there is a point, if there is some kind of productive path forward around them. For masculine, it is the identification point that it would require a level or degree of deep vulnerability in order to allow for that clearance zone in terms of the pathway, to make things easier, as it were. For some of the masculine energy right now, this is that work that you are doing, but it is very difficult work that you're doing in the process because you recognize that you are leaving yourself very vulnerable as you do this work. While for the other part of the masculine collective right now, you are potentially identifying that this is too much of a hurdle for you to cross, that it would allow you too much of a degree of feeling like you are losing some sense of control within your own self at this time, which is also helping you build a closure point at this point. While for feminine, this is the identification point of that same circumstance or situation, but it all has the degree or capacity of feeling about whether you are in balance with the masculine energy from these past circumstances or experiences. Because what we're really identifying right now is for the feminine energy that is not seeing this ability of the masculine to come forward in this way, you're not necessarily looking at this from any other point than recognizing that it feels like it's coming through in a space or place of someone who only requires or only wants control over a situation or circumstance, rather than having something that feels clear and harmonious and transparent. This is a lot of that work that the feminine energy is doing right now to identify the difficulty point around these past circumstances or experiences. For some of the feminine energy, if the masculine energy is not being able to come forth in this degree, is not able to show this level or ability of being vulnerable in this way, this is that point of clarity that you're giving, because you're looking at those past experiences as imbalanced, as situations or circumstances where someone wanted to maintain a level or degree of control that did not feel like it was equal to an ideal partnership. For the other part of the feminine collective right now, there could be a point of vulnerability that is coming towards you right now that is showing the fact that some masculine energy from the past has maintained or found an ability or degree to do this work for themselves, which is potentially allowing a clearing up of some of this cycle. It's allowing a path forward to a certain degree. But it all has to do for the feminine energy in terms of whether the masculine energy is showing this capacity or degree of being open and honest and transparent, hence allowing the playing field to feel like it is even, rather than one that feels like it is only coming from a space of masculine energy wanting to hold or maintain some unfair or imbalanced level of control over a situation. For masculine and feminine energy that is working in union at this time, this is a moment that could be feeling very emotionally vulnerable or challenging for the masculine energy. But we see that the feminine energy is lending support and patience in this degree as you both work to come into a space of easement in the long term. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now. Between our Three of Wands in its reversal, in combination with our Strength card in its reversal. So this is some of the challenge point. This is some of that retrograde energy really coming to the surface right now, because what we're really identifying right now is for masculine and feminine energy, bearing in mind that this is not based on gender, but what you feel most aligned to. We are seeing that there is some vulnerability being expressed around your own concerns about the long-term plans and the long-term goals going forward. For masculine, this is very triggering. This is a very triggering conversation to have, because there is this feeling of feeling some level or degree of a loss of control around some areas right now. This could even be articulating this to feminine energy at this time. But we are really seeing that this vulnerability right now is what is so important and valuable, because it is allowing for open communication on what needs to be fixed or what needs to be amended going forward, even if it is a challenging conversation to have. May I please have one card to clarify? Clarification coming through right now with our Page of Swords in its reversal. So this is showing a lot of conversation or a lot of effort and energy right now around one's own doubts and fears and uncertainties for both masculine and feminine energy. For masculine energy today, this is going to be a bit of a challenging space, because we do see here that something about the level or degree of the work that you're doing right now, having to overcome some of these hurdles, some of these setbacks, in terms of being able to see the path forward at this point, it is robbing you of a bit of confidence. It is making you feel like you're coming from a less than confident position. There's a level or degree of supreme vulnerability that is coming through right now around the masculine energy right now, and having to do and maintain this level or degree of work. But what we appreciate for the masculine energy right now, if you're experiencing this, is that you also recognize that there is something here that is making you kind of have to maintain this to a certain degree, but that it's not necessarily going to be long-term in this mode. We're seeing here that this is requiring a level or degree of patience right now. And it is that act of patience that is actually making the masculine energy feel somewhat vulnerable at this time. While for feminine energy right now, this could be expressing your own sense of vulnerability at this moment, potentially seeing the masculine energy and also recognizing that they themselves are going through it as well. For the masculine and feminine energy right now that is in partnership, this is mutual effort that we are seeing. These energies are effectively in somewhat of an alignment right now because feminine energy is reflecting the anxieties and concerns of the masculine energy at this time. But we do appreciate that this is a dual effort in kind of coming into a state of empathy and understanding at this moment, all for the sake of coming into deeper easement going forward. Having to effectively be patient right now in terms of where you both find yourselves at this moment, recognizing that something about this circumstance or situation is, while it's going on longer than you may ideally desire or require, it's not the long-term situation. It's something that needs to be effectively be born to a certain extent and needs a certain level or degree of patience put into play, even if that patience is difficult. Now, for the masculine and feminine energy that is not in partnership at this time, this is going to feel a lot more challenging. This is some of that retrograde. Guys, we are in Mercury retrograde right now with a Venus in retrograde, because what we're really seeing here is feminine is being very vulnerable right now. Feminine is articulating on their vulnerability. Feminine is articulating on their doubts and fears in terms of whether something has that long-term path going forward right now. They are asking, we are effectively seeing that feminine energy is asking masculine energy to come forth with some point of clarity in terms of what that long-term path is. If there is a long-term goal here, or if this is all things that are happening in the present. Feminine needs this point of clarity. Feminine needs to see that masculine is able to give forth in this practical way degree, to be able to lend that point of clarity to them in order to feel like there is something productive that can continue here. Masculine at the same time is being challenged because while they know and recognize, we see the masculine recognizes what needs to be put forth right now around circumstances or situations. We are seeing that what is being asked to put forth at this time is something that feels very triggering and very vulnerable to the masculine energy. It is robbing them of confidence. It is putting them in a space where they feel very vulnerable. And this is where we see the masculine energy falling in one of two different modalities. That is the modality where they're willing to give forth in this way, even if it requires a level or degree of deep vulnerability to do so, or we are seeing that the masculine energy is surrendering to the fact that they don't feel like they have this ability at this time, that this is not something that they feel confident to do at this moment, even at risk of the fact that it may effectively allow for something not to have a path going forward at this time. For masculine, there's one or two different sides that you're going to fall on this, and it's all challenging how you are comfortable, how comfortable you are with experiencing and working through your own sense of vulnerability at this moment. While for feminine, we are seeing that this is either the make or break point in terms of a path going forward right now for masculine, or if this is a moment of internal closure that you are building for yourself at this time. Because for the feminine right now, this is assessing those circumstances or situations that feel open-ended and allowing yourself a care or degree of understanding that if they are open-ended, it is because the masculine energy was not able to give forth in this tangible way to provide that clarity or optics in terms of something ever having any kind of long-term potential, something that was only existing in the present moment. And that was due to the masculine energy's own inability or lack of confidence to truly give forth to the feminine in this tangible way. Feminine energy has left themselves open to a certain degree to see if this energy is able to give forth in this way. And for some of the feminine energy right now, this is that moment of recognizing that that energy does not show the confidence or have that level or degree of confidence to give forth in this way, hence allowing you a point of closure in terms of recognizing the energy as such, understanding that why something might not have worked with a masculine energy was due to their own lack of confidence or ability to be vulnerable in this capacity. While for the other part of the feminine collective right now, this could be masculine energy coming towards you right now from a point of vulnerability, providing that level or degree of transparency and clarity, potentially around past circumstances or situations. And this is what is allowing some of this clearance point, because you are recognizing that the masculine energy is showing a level or degree of an ability to be vulnerable, because the feminine energy does not need the masculine energy to be strong at this time. They need to see that the masculine energy is willing to be as vulnerable as the feminine is willing to be. Continuing to get clarity on these cards right now between our strength in its reversal in combination with our temperance card. This is something that is a bit open-ended right now. We are seeing here that there's a level or degree of patience that is still being required. There's been patience around something. We're actually seeing here that this may even be speaking to something that you may be feeling that you've been patient on for quite some time right now. And that level of degree of patience that is requiring both masculine and feminine to feel very vulnerable at this time. Masculine, you may have been struggling with this to a certain degree or to a certain capacity. This is an eternal struggle that we're really seeing the masculine has been going through right now about whether they can achieve and come in from this point of vulnerability to the feminine at this time. While for feminine, there is a moment right now where your own patience is effectively like reaching a bit of a limitation point. It is becoming very hard for you to stay patient around some circumstances or situations because it is requiring you to also stay extremely vulnerable to them. Hence this need for closure that is really coming forth right now, particularly as we start this retrograde cycle. May I please have one card to clarify? Clarification coming through right now with this is what we're talking about. We've got our King of Swords. This is that moment that feminine energy is recognizing and we're really trying to articulate to the masculine energy. What we have right now occurring between masculine and feminine is a disparity on what strength looks like right now. Because for the feminine energy right now, feminine energy wants the masculine energy to be able to come forward in this way, to be open and vulnerable. Because feminine energy is identifying the fact that to feminine energy, the ability to be vulnerable is a point of strength. Feminine energy is identifying masculine energy as being strong if they are able to be vulnerable. The difference between a masculine energy coming through as an emperor in its reversal, someone who is trying to maintain an unfair level or degree of control in a situation, versus an energy that is willing to give forth in a way that makes them vulnerable. Hence, giving and affirming to the feminine energy that this masculine energy is effectively strong. While for masculine energy right now, this is the hurdle. This is the challenge because you are effectively feeling like you are having to combat yourself at this time. This is a lot of internal work that we are effectively seeing right now for the masculine energy, because as we are seeing, you are trying to maintain a level or degree of strength around circumstances or situations, but at the same time, you are challenged. You are being challenged to be extremely vulnerable in the midst of those circumstances or situations. You are trying to find that point that you can be vulnerable, but also still feel like you are able to maintain a level or degree of strength and integrity at this moment. It is a challenging space for the masculine, and this is why I'm saying that the masculine is falling either under one or two different places at this time. Because for some of the masculine energy, you are comfortable. You are found an ability to become comfortable getting to this level or degree of vulnerability. It is something that you have put a lot of care and effort and energy in. We're seeing this with that temperance in its reversal. But you are able to express from this vulnerable point, hence finding a level or degree of strength even in your vulnerable expression at this time. While for the other part of the masculine energy right now, we are seeing that this is a moment that you may be standing your ground around something, that this is too much of a trigger point. This is too much of a challenge point. This is too much vulnerability that is required in circumstances or situations. This is you effectively holding firm and holding a level of rigidness in terms of not effectively being able to offer this. But even for the masculine energy right now, that is holding firm on this. We see that there is something here that you are not necessarily closing the door in doing so. You're struggling with it. There's a point of struggle as you try to navigate the space between what you feel comfortable being vulnerable about versus what you need in order to feel strong and confident at this moment. While for masculine and feminine energy right now, this could effectively be that point of closure that we're seeing around past circumstances or situations. Masculine basically assessing right now whether these past circumstances or situations are ones that you feel confident tangibly addressing, giving forth in the way that you know that you need to, but recognizing that it is a very vulnerable act as you do so. You're feeling confident enough to be able to take that step at this time, having had some point or period of time to really decide if this is something that you wanted to do. For the other part of the collective, this is the masculine building a point of closure for themselves at this time, recognizing that this is something that you may never feel a ability or degree to be that vulnerable around. It's causing or requiring too much vulnerability. Hence, the closure point is something that you are creating for yourself at this moment. But even for the masculine energy here, this is almost not necessarily coming through as a full closure point. This is something that you're still kind of like working through in your own space, or just continuing to have a bit of a hold energy on, if you will. For feminine, this is that basically make or break moment, which is identifying for feminine that masculine either needs to come forward in a way that they're able to provide this clarity, provide this transparency, hence being vulnerable and showing a level or degree of strength. Or for the feminine energy right now, the point of closure is effectively allowing oneself to concede to the fact that some of those past situations and circumstances were ones that the masculine energy lacked that ability to do so. Potentially will always lack the ability to do so. And for some of the feminine energy right now, this may be even more articulated on by this point, because some of this is not necessarily a single masculine energy at this time, but seeing this in evidence right now with a new masculine energy that is at play, that is able to do this, is providing the clarity on the past experience, what the past experience with masculine was not able to bring forth, that you are now seeing in tangible evidence can be something that can be navigated in a space where someone can be weak but also strong, where someone can be open but also strong, where someone can be vulnerable, can allow that degree of vulnerability, the same that the feminine does, but feminine is seeking that as the point of strength. For the masculine and feminine energy that are in partnership right now, this is effectively what the feminine is seeing right now in partnership, that is allowing them to lend a certain degree of support toward masculine, even as they're going through a point of vulnerability. Because feminine energy is not being scared off by masculine being vulnerable. They are in fact empowered by the masculine energy, showing this degree and capacity of being this vulnerable while still being this strong. Continuing to, and for the masculine energy that's in partnership, you are finding a space where this can happen. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now between our Emperor card in its reversal in combination with our 10 of Wands in its reversal. Masculine energy, there is a bit of a struggle point that we're seeing right now. Some burden that you've been carrying that has been carrying a lot of weight for you right now. There's a recognition of needing to come into a point of easement right now around some of the things that you're carrying. But the challenge point around some of these burdens that you're trying to come into a state of easement on is a feeling of a loss of control. That there is something here that you are carrying that you need to come into a point of easement on, because even having to carry it right now, the way that you're carrying it, is creating a feeling of a loss of control for you right now. For masculine energy, this is that space or place of identifying what you effectively need to give forth at this time, because masculine energy is identifying that there's something here that they need to tangibly give forth on at this time to come into a state of greater easement, but also struggling to do so because there is a feeling of a loss of power while also doing that. For masculine and feminine energy right now, this is that point of closure. Masculine energy deciding if the burden of not coming forth in this way is coming through too heavy. It is allowing the masculine energy this care degree of being able to feel vulnerable enough to be able to come into this point of easement, because the burden of not doing so is now becoming too great to effectively bear. Masculine energy is feeling a little bit of a loss of control in doing so, but also recognizing that this is going to effectively allow for a path forward right now that will be easier. But for the other part of the masculine collective right now, we're seeing that this is that moment that you may be surrendering to circumstances or situations that you feel that you don't have this capacity or degree to be vulnerable enough towards at this time. This could be difficult because we see here that this is something that even relinquishing this point is something that is internally challenging, because there is something here that does not want to effectively be relinquished. So this is a bit of a struggle point for masculine right now in determining whether you can give forth in this way that is going to allow for that point of easement, or if it's too much of a challenging space. Hence the closure coming through in one or two different ways. While for feminine right now, this is that point of building closure for yourself at this moment, or seeing the results of what you are requiring at this time. Because feminine is effectively saying that they need to see that tangible evidence that masculine can be vulnerable and open in this way in order to build that point of clarity that there is a path going forward at this time. For feminine energy right now, this is either receiving a masculine energy that is showing this capacity or degree to be vulnerable in this way, hence making things easier as you proceed forward, getting that source of relief because you are getting that point of masculine showing their ability to surrender and be vulnerable in circumstances and situations, providing the clarity, providing the honesty. Hence, that easement of the path going forward at this time. While for the other part of the feminine collective right now, this is that moment that you may not necessarily be seeing what you're asking for. You are asking for something from the masculine. You are showing it. And to the feminine's degree, we're seeing here that feminine is almost leading by example at this time. Feminine energy is almost giving forth in this way to try to show to the masculine, look, I can do it, so can you. We can both do this. And the masculine energy right now is either matching them while feeling very vulnerable doing so, or they're showing a degree or capacity of not being able to do this. And that's the moment that we're seeing that for feminine energy, that's allowing some of that closure point on some of those open-ended experiences from the past, because that is you coming to terms with the fact that this is around, that these circumstances that may feel open-ended around masculine are really identifying a masculine energy that did not want to come through in a way that felt like an equal partnership, but wanted to be in a partnership that felt like it was more based on systems or a scenario of control at this time. Feminine energy is effectively just shedding that, one of two different scenarios coming to play. While for the feminine and masculine energy right now that is working in partnership, this is feminine energy supporting masculine energy as they're going into a state of trying to find easement, even while the masculine energy is feeling a little bit disempowered at this moment through some circumstances and situations that are trying a bit challenging or trying or difficult for the masculine energy at this time. May I please have one card to clarify, two cards coming out to clarify, and boy, look what two cards we have right now coming to the surface. We have here our Three of Swords in its reversal in combination with our Wheel of Fortune. What are we identifying right now? We are really seeing right now that both for masculine and feminine energy, this is that point of healing. This is that point of deep, profound healing, working and accepting and moving into a space of healing. This is why the feminine energy is effectively requiring this level or degree of transparency, of clarity, of honesty right now from the masculine energy, because feminine energy is looking at these circumstances and situations and saying to themselves, is this something that we can heal? Is this something that we can mutually come into a point of healing on, but will require a concession on the part of the masculine in being vulnerable and open at this time, hence leading to a point of greater easement? Is this something that we can mutually heal, hence allowing that path to move forward at this point? Or is this a moment that you are identifying to a certain extent that this is not a situation that allows for some degree of healing at this moment? That this is a moment that we are identifying at this point that feminine is looking towards past situations with masculine energy, and they are identifying that the reason these circumstances or situations did not work out was because the masculine energy was never interested in being in a harmonious, equal partnership. that the masculine energy was not able to give forth and be vulnerable, and that was a sign to the feminine that this energy was not looking for partnership, but was just looking to maintain a certain level or degree of control over the feminine energy. That is that moment that feminine is also conceding potentially on the other half of this collective right now, allowing this to be the personal closure that you need at this time to help you move into a state of healing and trusting in the path of faith as it leads you forward from here. While for masculine right now, this is that struggle point that we are seeing, because we are seeing that for the masculine, healing is also needed here. The difficulty, the burden that is being carried right now with the masculine energy is identifying to a certain extent that in order to heal circumstances and situations that may feel open-ended from the past, there is a point of easement that is available, but it is requiring you to relinquish a level or degree of control in them. That you would have to come forward in an honest, open, and vulnerable way. There's something about what you would need to give forth in these circumstances or situations at this time that would put you in a space or place of deep vulnerability. And we are seeing that the masculine, much like the feminine, is also falling on two different sides of this spectrum right now. For half of the masculine collective right now, this is allowing yourself to surrender to these situations. This is coming into a space of easement, giving forth in a way that feels so vulnerable that it challenges your own feelings of self-control at this time. But you are doing so because the path of healing is available here. Because you recognize that if you do so, there's almost immediate healing that could come as a result of it. And you are trusting in fate as you do so. While for the other part of the masculine collective right now, this is that moment that you are deciding that these circumstances and situations from the past are too challenging. They are too triggering. They shake too much of your own need for a level or degree of self-control at this time. This is that moment that you are effectively surrendering those circumstances or situations, trying to build internal closure at this point, because it's not that you don't recognize or identify what you need to give forth at this time in order to heal them. It's just assessing or feeling like the price of your own sense of self-mastery is too high. This is that moment that you're coming into internal healing for yourself at this moment and trusting in the path of faith as you go forward. For feminine and masculine energy right now that are in partnership, this is that dual work. Feminine energy is lending support right now to a masculine that may be feeling somewhat disempowered right now. But feminine energy is actually working to make it easier for that masculine energy for the sake of mutual healing and trusting in the path of faith as you go forward in this capacity. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now between our 10 of Wands in its reversal in combination with our Page of Swords energy. It's a little bit of an exhaustive energy today. There's a little bit of surrendering that we're seeing here around circumstances and situations, particularly as they're related to the past right now. Because we are seeing a lot of care and consideration that is being paid to anything that feels like it is open-ended, anything that is feeling like it is not resolved right now. A deep desire for things to get easier at this point, but also feeling some level or degree of exhaustion around them, kind of surrendering yourself to these circumstances and situations at this time. And it is difficult work for both masculine and feminine energy at this moment, bearing in mind that this is not based on gender, but what you feel most aligned to. Because, as I said, for the masculine and feminine energy that are not in partnership right now, this is that moment of looking at past circumstances and situations and defining and identifying whether the energy can come forward to create a state of easement. For feminine right now, this is requiring, as we said, the masculine energy to come forward in a space of vulnerability. Feminine energy is either seeing that, and the point of vulnerability for the feminine is actually exactly what the feminine energy needs to see to allow things to be easier going forward. If feminine sees that, then the point is clear. The path is clear. There's a point of observation that this energy is not trying to come forward in a controlling way, but as a pace of mutual vulnerability, because this is the same vulnerability that feminine themselves are expressing actively at this time. Hence allowing for this process to continue. While for the other part of the feminine collective right now, this is identifying these open-ended situations, not seeing masculine coming forth in this degree. And that is the point of closure that is happening. That is the point of easement, because you are looking at that energy and you are surrendering to the fact that that energy is operating too much from a state of personal fear to be able to be in alignment, to be able to be in partnership, because their fear of being vulnerable is effectively what is blocking anything from being able to come into a point of fruition or a path forward being eased. While for masculine right now, it is the same journey in different ways, because the masculine, you are recognizing that there are some paths forward at this time that are open and available to you if you are vulnerable, if you allow yourself a level or degree of vulnerability at this time. And for some of the masculine collective, this is you coming into that point of openness. This is coming into that point of giving the feminine what they need right now, which is that mutual sense of vulnerability and honesty at this time, hence allowing for the path to become easier going forward. Though this is difficult for you because it does leave you feeling somewhat disempowered. For the other part of the masculine collective right now, this is that moment of surrendering and feeling like you don't have that capacity at this time, that there's something here that is too disempowering for you to be able to provide the feminine energy what they are asking for. And this is that moment that you are building internal closure for yourself at this moment, because it is too much of a difficulty. It is too much of a hurdle. And so you're putting that burden down. While for the masculine and feminine energy that is in partnership right now, this is that dual effort of finding a way to lighten one another's load and recognizing that it's okay to be in partnership and not always feel like you are the strong one. It is allowing oneself to come into a point of easement and having someone else share your burden at this time that is helping you as you proceed forward from this point. May I please have one card to clarify? Clarification, same cards as yesterday. Same cards as yesterday. Guys, we've got so many of the same cards as yesterday. This is a continuation on our reading yesterday. Practical effort being put into a state of easement. For feminine energy, what does that practical effort right now look like if for masculine energy and feminine energy that is not in partnership at this time? Masculine energy coming forward in this way or this degree of showing an ability to be vulnerable is exactly what the feminine energy needs to see, to feel like there is something that can continue here, that there is something that is productive, that can be utilized. But it all requires the masculine energy coming from a point of vulnerability and clarity and honesty at this time, matching the feminine's own degree of vulnerability. This is the feminine ability basically being like, look, this is what is needed. This is what I need to see. And almost to a certain extent for the feminine energy that's receiving this at this time, this is immediately lending support to the masculine energy that is showing this capacity or degree of being vulnerable in this way. Because now it's the feminine energy basically saying like, thank you for giving us something that we can work with. Thank you for allowing this to be a mutual point of productivity, that we can start here in terms of actually making something that matters, that making something easier. But it all comes from the masculine's ability to be vulnerable in this degree. For some of the feminine energy, this is something that you are seeing, the masculine energy coming forth in this way, offering this level of degree of vulnerability, conceding, being able, even while recognizing that this is difficult for the masculine energy to do. Feminine energy is almost immediately utilizing that as a point of activation, being like, this is what I needed to see. This is the change we needed to see in the world. This is something that we can use to make something productive, going from 10 wands to 1 wand. Thank you. It's a burden lifted. That what's really happening here is with the masculine energy coming forward in this degree, what they're really doing is that is the immediate lightening of the load. Doesn't even matter what is being communicated. The fact that it is being communicated from a place of vulnerability and honesty immediately creates a space and place for masculine and feminine to move into a space of productivity, right? Unifying their goals. Feminine energy almost immediately saying like, I can work with that. We can work with this. Let's figure out how to work with where you are right now. Thank you for being open and honest and allowing for that clearance of the point of effusication. While for the other part of the feminine energy right now, this is the struggle point. This is that point of looking at some energy right now from the past and effectively being like, I don't see that point of closure. I don't see that ability of the masculine energy coming forward in this way, shape, or degree to be able to provide this level of clarity at this time. And for the feminine energy that's on the other part of this spectrum, this is the feminine energy basically moving away, building that internal closure around these circumstances or situations, identifying and resolving to themselves that the energy that they were effectively holding on to a certain degree, or were leaving the door open, as it were, has shown evidence to the fact that they are not at a point of confidence that they can come forward and be vulnerable and provide this to the degree that the feminine needs. So what's feminine doing right now? She's shedding that burden. She's shedding that burden. She's shedding that old energy so that she can move into more productive pathways in the future, potentially even seeing examples of energy that is able to do this in the present as they do so. For masculine and feminine energy right now, that is going through this is also that moment that, again, we are seeing that you are coming into this space or place of allowing yourself to be vulnerable in this area, going back to some situation or circumstance in the past, lending that point of clarity, lending that point of vulnerability, lending that pathway forward that immediately is going to lead to something new being able to evolve, to allowing for a point of easement. For some of the masculine energy right now, this is so difficult. It is so difficult because it is requiring you to be so vulnerable as you effectively, as you say, to a certain extent, unburden yourself of some of these truths, these vulnerabilities that you've been holding back all this time. This is you effectively coming into a point of deep vulnerability by unburdening yourself of what you've been carrying towards feminine energy at this moment. But recognizing that that is what is allowing for a point of easement, to a point of productivity, even in the state of your own vulnerability. While for the other part of the masculine collective right now, this is something that is feeling like effectively that the price is too high. This is feeling potentially like it is too challenging. It's not recognizing and identifying what you would need to give forth at this point to be able to come back into union with some of this past energy that we see is still open-ended. But it is too much of a burden to be able to come into the space where you would have to be so vulnerable in order to allow this to occur. And for the other part of the masculine energy right now, this is you effectively shedding this, allowing for that point of closure internally as you proceed down a new pathway for yourself, concentrating on a new beginning for yourself from this point moving forward. While for masculine and feminine energy that is in partnership at this time, this is that mutual effort that we see, that you are making things easier for one another, driving forward with a unified sense of purpose, a unified plan. This is coming into an easement of the plans, finding that point of clarity to help you see what the long-term path or goal is at this time. Continuing, and masculine energy getting a lot of support in partnership right now, even through some points of vulnerability. For masculine, continuing to get clarification right now. Look at this difficult energy that we're seeing right now around masculine, because we've got clarity here with our King of Swords in combination with our Page of Swords in its reversal. So for the masculine energy right now, what we're really identifying is this is a moment that is feeling like an incredibly challenging point, because there are some situations or circumstances that are requiring you to be strong and vulnerable at the same time. That there's a point here that you are identifying that the only way to come forward in a strong way would be to come forward in a vulnerable way. To be very vulnerable in something would actually be the point of strength. Masculine energy is vacillating between these 2 points right now, and even putting a bit of patience on it, because it's feeling a bit frustrating, because this is not a difficult place for the masculine energy to maintain. Something about what is being asked for you right now is making you feel extremely vulnerable, but you are trying your best to stay strong throughout that point of vulnerability. For the masculine energy right now, as we saw, this is that point of challenge around some open-ended situations or circumstances from the past that may be requiring you to have some point of deep vulnerability in order for there to be a pathway cleared moving forward. Masculine energy is vacillating today to try to determine if this is something that they can do. For half of the masculine energy right now, this is that point where you are allowing yourself to be vulnerable, but you're also immediately feeling a sense of strength in that vulnerability. You're recognizing the deeper level of strength that is required in being vulnerable. That is the journey today for the masculine. For the other part of the masculine collective right now, this is that trigger point. This is saying to yourself, this is too much. This is too great a burden. I can't be this vulnerable. I need to be stronger in this, which is why it may potentially be becoming a point of closure around circumstances or situations from the past that are requiring this level or degree of openness. While for feminine right now, this is effectively looking at the masculine energy around them, you right now, and seeing if the masculine energy has mastered this ability. If the masculine energy has mastered the ability in recognizing that in order to be truly strong, one must be vulnerable. That true strength does not come from holding a certain level of control over situations that feels like it is unfair, or not being as open and honest, which does not feel fair to the feminine. But instead, feminine energy is seeking partnership with masculine that shows this ability of being strong while also being vulnerable. This is what the feminine energy is either seeing right now from past situations that is giving the feminine the clarity that they feel that they can go forward at this time. Or this is the point of closure for feminine in identifying some situations or circumstances from the past and utilizing this as a point of clarification going forward, in understanding that the reason those circumstances and situations did not work out the way the feminine ideally desired was not for a lack of effort on the feminine's part, but rather recognizing that there was something here that the feminine needed to see from the masculine as it relates to vulnerability, and not necessarily seeing that, but holding that as the benchmark going forward as they close the cycle. While for the masculine and feminine energy that is in partnership right now, this is masculine energy navigating this space in support of feminine energy that is trying to make it easier for them as they do so. Because we see that masculine energy is being challenged to be in spaces right now where they need to be vulnerable, but they also need to be strong. And there may even be some point of waiting right now, or having to have some degree of patience as they navigate places or spaces that create this sense of vulnerability for them that is very hard to maintain. May I please have one card to clarify? Clarification coming through right now with, here are those secrets coming out again. This card keeps coming out, but today it is in its upright. There's something here that is hard to see. There is something here that is hard to understand. For masculine energy, this is a bit of the mystery. This is a bit of that mystery that you're trying to navigate. This space that you're trying to inhabit is a bit of a head scratcher, because masculine energy, you're going through this right now and you're saying, how can I be strong and also vulnerable? How can I be strong and also vulnerable? How does that work? What is the secret? What is the secret behind being strong and vulnerable? How does that work? And for some of the masculine energy right now, this could be waiting right now around some circumstances or situations that you feel like you don't necessarily have the full clarity and optics on. Right? We're seeing here that from the masculine energy, not only is this an internal head scratcher right now as you try to navigate this space, because it's creating kind of like a twilight effect in you in terms of being like, how do I stay in both spaces at once? How can I be strong while also being vulnerable? But there's also here that masculine energy is being effectively forced to be in this modality because there's something here that the masculine energy doesn't have full clarity on. For some of the masculine energy right now, we're almost seeing the fact that you're coming forward in this way to seek clarity. That there is something here that you are kind of taking a bit of a leap on. You're taking a little bit of a risk on because you don't necessarily have the full clarity on it. But we're also recognizing to a certain extent that for the masculine energy right now, you are recognizing that around some open-ended situations from the past right now, the only way to be able to come forward in them is to be open and vulnerable, to see what results, to see what occurs. And there is a point where the masculine energy isn't 100% confident about the space or place that will put them in. This is having to do with a lot of the masculine energy right now dealing with their own feeling of control at this moment, because masculine energy has a hard time being this open and vulnerable because it creates a space where they don't necessarily know what they can anticipate going forward, right? That is the difference between the masculine energy feeling like they have some level or degree of leverage or control around situations or circumstances versus being very vulnerable and seeing what arises. Masculine energy recognizes right now that some of this, as we said, around the past circumstances, around the past situations and scenarios that they may need to give forth on that still feel open-ended. The reason that they need to do so is because there was a feeling of things not being in the full light of day around circumstances or situations that did not have full clarity shed on them. Masculine energy right now is struggling about whether they are in a space or place where they can feel like they can truly open up, where they can truly give that point of clarification, of honesty right now. But this is a challenge space for the masculine energy, because this is that decision point about whether the masculine energy is going to be able to give forth and be open and vulnerable and fully admit to come into a space of giving the feminine what they are asking for at this time, which is clarity, absolute clarity. Or if the masculine energy is going to continue to hold their secrets, if they're going to continue to have to hold these things too close to their chest, in which case they have to move away from circumstances or scenarios. This is the challenge point that we are identifying right now. This is the point that we're really seeing that the masculine energy is trying to navigate within themselves right now, because some of this has to do with coming to a level or degree of honesty that is too much of a challenge point for some of the masculine right now. So for some of the masculine energy at this moment, we see that this is a point where you are shedding light on circumstances or situations that you feel may have been hidden in the past. Going back to those circumstances or situations that you recognize are open-ended, feminine wants this level or degree of clarity, and you are willing to effectively offer it to the best ability that you are able right now. Recognizing at the same time that at the same moment, there are things that you are waiting for from the feminine now. And you're recognizing that only by coming from a point of honesty on your part, will you effectively be able to get that same level of honesty from them in kind. While for the other part of the masculine collective right now, this is a moment that you are building closure for yourself around past circumstances or situations, because these are things that you are not willing to divulge. There are points here that you're not willing to fully express openly. And that is that point of clarity for yourself where you may be falling on the spectrum where you are holding these things to yourself, because to be able to come from a point of full honesty would be too triggering and damaging right now to your own sense of self at this time, at which point you are building a point of closure around those things that are open-ended. While for feminine right now, this is that point of clarification that you are giving yourself right now, because the frustrating thing that feminine is recognizing around some of those open-ended experiences from the past is the reason they feel open-ended is because you never had full clarity on what was going on. You never had full clarity on what was going on. You have left the door open to a certain extent for old energy to come in and provide that point of clarification. This is a situation that the feminine has been very patient on, and to a certain extent. The thing that feminine energy is asking for from masculine is clarity and honesty. And for some of the feminine energy right now, this is getting that level or degree of honesty from the masculine. Masculine being vulnerable, shedding light on those situations or circumstances that never made sense between them, that required that degree of clarification. And that is what is giving you the confidence to believe that that masculine is one that is strong enough to proceed forward with right now. While for the other part of the feminine collective right now, this is that point of closure around past circumstances and situations, because you are identifying that the reason those situations and circumstances feel open-ended is because the masculine energy had too many secrets. There were things that they were not willing to divulge or be completely honest and open about. And that was that was showing the fact that that energy was too afraid to be open, too afraid to be honest. And feminine energy is building this point of closure at this time as they move into new energy with masculine that shows this ability or degree to be strong but weak, vulnerable but strong, by providing full clarity as they go forward. While for masculine and feminine energy that is in partnership at this moment, this is potentially feminine energy right now, helping masculine energy navigate a space or place that is making them feel very vulnerable at this time. And it is difficult because masculine energy is working through some situations or circumstances where they feel they don't have full optics. Whatever this is in partnership at this moment, the masculine is at this point of struggle right now because they're not necessarily sure what the outcome is going to be. But what we appreciate for both masculine and feminine energy right now is they are trusting in fate at this time if you are in partnership and you are navigating these spaces of uncertainty together. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now between our Three of Swords in its reversal in combination with our Wheel of Fortune, in combination with our Ace of Wands. I gotta say, if this is the beginning of the retrograde, it's not looking too shabby right now. These are some very, very positive cards to be receiving in the midst of the retrograde. Because what we're really seeing right now is there is a point in trusting in the path of fate right now. This is what's allowing that point of closure. Feminine saying like, I'm either going to see what I need to see or I'm going to move on. Masculine being like recognizing I'm either going to show this degree or capacity of being this vulnerable in situations or I'm going to move on. Both spaces allowing a degree of healing through practical application today. Beautiful energy, very strong cards today. All of it leading to a path of healing and productivity as we proceed forward from this point. May I please have one card to clarify? Clarification coming right now with our another ace card, our Ace of Swords, okay? This is that point of triumph. The fact is that to a certain extent, the triumph is almost here. The reason this point of closure is so important at this time is because for many of you, the process forward has already begun. You're already on your path towards this healing. The healing is already occurring to a certain extent. What's really happening right now is allowing a sense of closure around past circumstances and experiences is happening. It's either happening one way or another. That's the thing that's really happening right now. It's not holding back on any of this. This is a point of building that point of closure. Again, for feminine energy, if they're not getting that level or degree of insight, of clarity around past experiences with masculine that have shown that they've been patient on, that have shown no ability in lending that degree of vulnerability around situations that have been feeling open-ended, feminine energy is just moving forward. Feminine energy is just allowing that to be the point of closure right now as they proceed forward on their path. While for the other part of the feminine collective, you're receiving this level or degree of vulnerability around these experiences right now, and that is also leading to a point of victory. It's allowing for that healing to occur. It's allowing you to put practical work in at this time. So either end of this, there is success. For masculine, it is the same. Because for masculine right now, this is identifying some situations and circumstances from the past that feel rather open-ended, that you recognize that have been effectively things that you've been paused or waiting on to a certain degree. And this is that moment of understanding what you need to give forth in these moments right now to determine whether there will be a path forward. There's a level and degree of vulnerability that is required right now in these experiences that you are now deciding for yourself. You're either putting forth and being vulnerable in this way, hence allowing that healing journey to proceed and commence with some of that past energy that you feel you require closure on at this point, hence allowing a path of easement going forward, or you are coming to terms with the fact that the level of vulnerability required to be able to go back to those is simply too high. That it is simply too high of a price to be able to be that vulnerable in those experiences at this time, which is also a point of healing that you are creating for yourself at this moment. While for masculine and feminine energy in partnership right now, this is that harmony point. Recognizing right now that you are both working from a point of healing, a lot of healing coming in, doing everything you can to heal circumstances and situations at this time, putting practical effort in for the sake of the partnership itself, trusting in the hand of fate as you continue forward, and almost feeling immediate victory as you do so. So while it is challenging space for masculine right now in partnership, you're almost getting immediate support through your own sense of vulnerability, and that in itself is the point of success. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now between Our Ace of Wands in its reversal, in combination with the Moon card. Looking right now around situations or circumstances that you feel you don't have full optics on. This is addressing some of those situations and circumstances that are feeling so open-ended from the past. Recognizing the reason that they feel so open-ended is because you didn't necessarily get the clarity that you effectively needed. They're going to feel open-ended because of that. But recognizing at the same time that something about identifying the fact that you have a point of open-endedness around circumstances and situations from the past, because you didn't have full clarity, is almost creating the point of closure right now. It's allowing you to take that as you will. For some of you, it is creating a moment of getting that point of clarity. It is immediately getting the clarity from those experiences, especially for feminine right now. Having someone come through and give you that point of clarity around the things that you had questions about. That is what's allowing the path forward. For the other part of you, you're looking at this and you're saying, I never got the clarity I needed. That is my point of closure. The fact that someone did not provide the level of clarity that they wanted something to exist in a space that was not transparent, because someone was trying to hold an unnecessary or unfair ability of controlling a situation by not giving the full clarity around it, is also creating a productive space right now to be able to move forth for the other part of the feminine collective. For masculine right now, this is all about the light that you can shed on past circumstances and experiences. Masculine realizes that there is a path that is open here. A path from the past that is open right now to be addressed. But in order to provide the pathway forward on those situations and circumstances would require you to divulge some things that you haven't been necessarily completely open with towards those situations and circumstances. For half of the collective right now, this is the masculine energy. You're coming forward with this point of clarity, while also needing some for yourself. A lot of this is coming through for the masculine doing this right now because you recognize that in order to receive it back in kind, you need to provide it. While for the other part of the masculine collective right now, this is you effectively choosing to hold on to what you were not completely clear on. You're holding on to those secrets. You're holding on to those things that you do not want to reveal. Hence, again, because they are too challenging to your own sense of confidence, your own sense of control around circumstances or situations, even recognizing that that means that the path on those situations is effectively blocked because you can't come forward in this way. And this is the moment that you are starting on a new course for yourself, coming into a point of easement, building closure, recognizing that there are some things here that you did not necessarily want to divulge or be fully open and honest about. And that is that point of easement as you go forward from this point. While for masculine and feminine energy that is in partnership right now, this is working in the face of some things that you don't feel like you have full optics on right now, but you're putting in practical effort every step of the way. May I please have one card to clarify? Clarification coming through right now with, this is a bit of an issue. This is a real issue right now. Because what is happening right now, and this is some of this retrograde energy that's coming to the forefront, is what you're recognizing right now for masculine and feminine on this journey, and particularly for the feminine on this journey. The lack of clarity, the lack of understanding is the thing that needs to be healed from. That the trauma that it effectively created, or the space that it created in terms of feeling like you never were given the optics right now, is the situation and circumstance that you're working to correct for. It's a burden that you have to carry from this point going forward. It's difficult. We're seeing that for the energy that's working on closure at this point. For the masculine and feminine energy that is working in partnership right now, there is even a moment of having to navigate this together in trying to get into a deeper sense of understanding. Now, for feminine energy right now that is working through this, again, we are seeing that this is falling on one of two different spectrums. For the feminine energy that is looking towards situations or circumstances from the past, if someone is coming forward right now with this point of clarity around some situations and circumstances that you feel that they weren't completely open and honest with from the past, there is a point of difficulty that still needs to be navigated here. because it is a feeling of having to experience or express the sadness or the frustration of the energy not coming forward in this way from the start, right? That's what we're really seeing here. That is that point of grief. While for the masculine energy right now, this is also that moment that is feeling like such a challenge or a point of vulnerability at this moment. Because masculine energy that is in this space or place where they're providing this point of clarity right now towards some feminine energy that is effectively asking them for this at this time, they are recognizing their own grief or the burden that they've been carrying and expressing their own difficulty in the fact that they did not provide this when it was effectively asked for. There is a mutual share of a burden being carried here. While for the other part of the feminine energy right now on this spectrum, there is a point where this is a moment that you recognize the grief and the frustration and the anger of having never gotten that clarification. It is the fear, the trauma and the difficulty of feeling like you are in situations or circumstances where you ask someone to be open, you ask someone to be honest, and they weren't able to do so in the capacity that you would ideally have desired. That is so difficult and triggering. You're still carrying a lot of this burden, but you are accepting it at this time. You are seeing it fully in the face for what it is. You are recognizing what the problem is around those situations and circumstances, all for the sake of healing. And even while you are experiencing that and you're putting your intentionality into starting new journeys with other energy that is more open and honest, we are seeing here that this is still a very, very heavy burden to carry. Because the anxiety and the fear is now there of someone being in a space or place where they would not give you that level or degree of clarity and transparency at this time. While for the other part, for the masculine energy right now, this is that burden in feeling the weight and the vulnerability of having to communicate these things that feminine is asking for, is requiring a level of also mitigating for the fact that this was not immediately forthcoming. That there's something here that immediately, even now, even while you're trying to practically potentially put this effort and energy in clarifying this right now, is going to have a bit of a heaviness and burden to it because it is a difficult conversation to have, okay? It's a lot of grief that you're carrying in terms of not having shared this the way that you should have, or at the time frame that you may recognize that you should have at the time, because there's something here that feels like it was effectively held to a certain degree. So this is having to share the communal feeling of grief or frustration that you yourself have effectively been carrying at this point, even as you're going back on this, because we see here that the reason for the masculine energy that's willing to do this work right now, the determination, the distance that has been created from not being able to be vulnerable in this capacity has become too great a burden in the face of what you've been holding back from being honest about. While for the other part of the masculine energy at this time, this is that letting go process. Because we see here that even for the energy right now that's trying to let go of these circumstances or situations, it is very, very difficult. It is very, very challenging. Because what you're choosing to do to a certain extent is you are recognizing you're having to face your own difficulty or inability to come forward in this way. The fear of revealing these truths is outweighing the partnership itself. And that is a part of the burden that you're carrying moving forward from this point, because you're looking at this more of a point of feeling like there's a lack of correction here, that there's not something that you feel like you can correct, even if you want to at this time. That almost like what you would have to reveal feels like it is too great a burden and that it would not necessarily be accepted. And that is what's allowing you to move forward at this point, but you're carrying a lot of grief as you proceed to do so. While for masculine and feminine energy right now that is working in partnership, this is sharing some of your own doubts and fears at this time. Masculine and feminine energy right now are feeling like they're in a point of vulnerability and deep grief at this time. But you're putting a lot of practical work in right now to mitigate for any of these unknowns and also to navigate any of your own doubts and fears. This is supported work that you're doing even as you move into some spaces or places where you're not sure what's going to happen next. But you're doing everything you can to mitigate for that, even through some of these hurdles and obstacles at this time. Final card for today's spread between our Ace of Swords in combination with our Nine of Swords. So look at these two cards together, my friends. This is a lot Mercury retrograde here. Having to go through right now a moment of navigating both a sense of victory and a sense of loss. That there's something here. We're seeing energies, new opportunities, new activities, imminent victory right now, having success in certain spaces right now, but also bearing the loss, because what we're potentially seeing right now is there is such a transitional energy around these right now that even in the face of experiencing some point of success, you're also experiencing some point of simultaneous grief, potentially around open-ended situations or circumstances from the past that are requiring closure, even while you're moving into a space or place of immediate victory. Now, for feminine energy right now, this is that moment of potentially getting some point of clarity around circumstances and situations from the past, having to bear some of that burden, but also feeling victory in terms of finally getting the clarity that you needed. While for the other part of the collective right now, this is feminine effectively letting go of some of those past experiences or opportunities that you may have been leaving open-ended to a certain degree, to accept and to move into the new opportunities that are waiting for you on the other side. This is that personal closure process that we're seeing for feminine. For masculine right now, again, half of the spectrum is coming forward right now, opening up in this degree, feeling like you are going to unburden yourself, but it is a painful process of unburdening. But recognizing the fact that to do so brings almost imminent victory here. Or for the other part of the masculine collective right now, what we're really seeing is this is that point of release, of letting go of a circumstance or situation where you don't feel capable or confident enough to be able to be this open and honest around, and just utilizing this as you move forward in this new path or plan for yourself going forward, but carrying the weight of some of that feeling of loss or frustration in terms of those situations or circumstances where you don't feel the confidence in being open in this way. While for masculine and feminine energy right now that is in partnership, this is working to support each other through difficult circumstances, through challenges, but being there, being each other's rock through situations that are trying for you at this time, and lending that level or degree of support. May I please have one card to clarify? Clarification coming through right now. Six of Pentacles. Reciprocity. Reciprocity is key right now. This is about equal give and take, getting what you put in, right? For masculine and feminine energy, this is the focal point right now. It is identifying what feels like it is reciprocal. For feminine energy that did not get this level or degree of clarity from past circumstances or experiences, this is that moment that you're feeling that level or degree of imminent victory, even as you let go of some of those points of the past. Focusing on the fact that what you're moving into right now, because for some of you right now, for the feminine, you're doing this specifically because you're seeing it around you right now. It's allowing for this point of release on the past experiences, is recognizing what feels like it is reciprocal, as opposed to something that feels like the power was always off. So something that feels like it was never in balance or alignment, but instead an energy from the past that wanted to maintain some certain level of control over the circumstances at play, over how they were navigated, not something that felt like it was equal or reciprocal. This is that shedding process that feminine's having around any energy that they feel does not want to have an equal, reciprocal, open, transparent partnership with them. Feminine energies releasing it, even if it's difficult, feeling the imminent success and victory as they do so, because there is immediate expression in feminine energy on what reciprocity looks like right now. While for masculine, and that they're either getting that from past experiences of masculine coming forward in this way, showing this degree and capacity of giving forth in this way, even if it is painful, feeling that point of victory, or experiencing right now in the present, potentially even through new manifestations of masculine, but holding the grief about letting go of past energy that they had hoped would be able to meet them in this way, but showed some capacity of being unable to. While for masculine energy right now, what we're really identifying is this is also that moment where you are being challenged with your own level of degree of reciprocity right now. You are looking at situations from the past that may be requiring you to reach a level of vulnerability right now, to see if you can give forth in the same way that feminine is vulnerable in this fashion. For some of you, we see that that is that moment that you are doing so. It is difficult for you to do so. It is a real hurdle to do this. It is very hard. It challenges your own sense of control, but you are doing it and you're immediately sensing a sense of victory and peace because you are coming back in partnership. You're coming back in union by doing that work right now, hence allowing for a feeling of victory even as it is difficult to go into that modality. While for the other part of the masculine collective right now, this is feeling some point of shedding a past circumstance or situation, recognizing that what would be effectively required of you right now feels like it is too great. It is pushing too hard on your own feeling of personal strength, your own feeling of self-mastery at this time. And while it is creating a great burden for you at this moment as you are experiencing that, we see the fact that even now you are learning a valuable lesson as you proceed forward. That the lesson that's coming through right now is how you can build partnerships moving forward that are going to feel like they are coming forward from a point where they are more equal, that they are more built on that level, even give and take. And you're putting a lot of consideration into that even as you move forward right now, letting those past experiences be a lesson in better reciprocity as you go forward from this point. Hence this becoming a lesson, but a very painful one at this time. For masculine and feminine energy right now that is working in partnership, this is that point of easement, because while you are bearing your own traumas, your own griefs right now, particularly for masculine, going through a very difficult time right now in terms of their own feeling of vulnerability, you're getting that even give and take. You're getting that level of support, and that's helping you feel like there's a victory even through something that feels like a bit of a setback. Bottom of the deck on this reading right now. Wow. 10 of Swords in its reversal. This is feeling like, again, this is really beautiful energy. I gotta say, for Mercury retrograde starting, this is some beautiful energy. This is feeling like a restart. This is feeling like a rebirth. Either, again, rebirth around situations and circumstances from the past where someone is showing a degree and capacity to come forth in a way that they may not have been able to from the past. And that is creating a sense of a rebirth. Or this is allowing oneself to accept where one finds themselves, building that sense of closure, coming into that sense of allowing a care and degree of easement to come in right now. And it feels like a bit of a rebirth. The problem with rebirth is it is not easy. We never ask when a phoenix is rising from the ashes if they feel the fire that they had to go through in order to come back out of the ashes. The process of rebirthing can be as difficult as the process of an ending. It is heavy energy because you are moving forward right now, having shared these experiences. For the energy that's coming back into partnership through this level of clarity right now, it is difficult, because this is feeling like a new start. It's feeling like it has to be a bit of a clean slate, but it is painful because you're still carrying a lot of the burdens and the pains from the past experience with you as you come back into alignment right now. While for the other part of the collective right now, this rebirth is difficult because you're holding a lot of the pain from the past experiences that are guiding you forward from this point with a better sense of clarity. So be easy on yourself even as you go forward from this point. That is our daily collective read for today. I want to thank you guys so much for being here and enjoying it with me. Please remember, if you would like to book a private reading with me, you can book one on my website, graystrega.com. My private readings are done over video with the option of a recording sent to you afterwards. And if you are a subscriber to my TikTok, you can take 10% off any of my services when you pay. Thank you for the gift. Just mention your TikTok subscriber ID at the point of payment. Please remember that if you book a reading on my website, it is a 2-step process. You have to book the reading and you have to pay for the reading. Please make sure you do both if you would like to have that reading. Most importantly, please remember that I will never, ever, 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 ever reach out to you for a private reading. I will never inbox you. I will never DM you. I will never slide into your PMs and tell you that I have a very important message that only I can deliver. The only way you can book a reading with me is if you book one on my website. So I encourage you to do it there. I want to thank you guys so much for being here with me and sharing with me in this reading, and we will do this again tomorrow.